Hi everyone, and thank you for joining me on Dishing with me, Heather D. And I am Heather, and so we are about to make some homemade biscuits, and I mean some good homemade buttermilk biscuits with homemade jelly. For those of you who are interested in trying to make that nice southern dish. Now, of course, this is usually served with either eggs, bacon, sausage, or whatever. And today I'm just going to show you how I make my homemade buttermilk biscuits and my homemade jelly. Now, this is a recipe, of course, you can pretty much find on all internet websites. This is a recipe that how my mom showed me how to do it, because she's being from Louisiana. I figured I wanted to really know how to make some really good ones. Last time I made some, well, I would say the first time I remember making my biscuits, I was about 9 or 10 years old, and my little cousin was with me, and they came out really good. They were fluffy, but I realized, and my mom brought to me, that you're not supposed to add egg in biscuits, which my cousin and I, we didn't know. We just wanted to make a nice homemade breakfast for our family. But as time went on, and after some practice, I finally got the hang of things, and I finally figured out how to do it with a little coaching and a little advice from my mom and my grandmother when a few years back, on how I make my biscuits, how to make good homemade biscuits. So we're going to start off with some flour. Whoops. We're going to start out with some flour, and I am using King Arthur flour. I'm going to put my milk to the side. I have about close to 2 cups of buttermilk right here. I have some baking powder. Now, you don't have to add baking powder if you're using self-rising flour, but if you're going to use all-purpose flour, you have to use at least about a good 1 tablespoon of baking powder to half teaspoon of salt, and that is for like a good 2.5-3 cups of all-purpose flour. I am using King Arthur's self-rising flour, and it has everything already in it, the salt and baking powder, but because I kind of like my biscuits extra fluffy, I'm going to add a little bit more baking powder. So we're going to first measure out our flour. Okay, going to do about a good 3 cups of self-rising flour, and this is, like I said, King Arthur self-rising flour, and King Arthur is a really good brand of flour. I'm not a spokesperson for them because it's unbleached. So if you're trying to watch what kind of flour and things that you use, King Arthur is really good. Yes, it's a little bit on the pricey side, but for health and other purposes, if you don't want to use bleached flour, King Arthur is the best one. That is 2 cups. My family loves biscuits. My kids love biscuits. So I'm making a large portion of this. 3 cups. Okay. Got my 3 cups of flour. Now to add a tablespoon of, actually, you know what? Not a tablespoon. I'm going to do 1 teaspoon. An extra teaspoon of baking powder. Like I said, this don't have to add it. This is just me. And in my recipe, I do mention it too. And you'll be able to get that recipe on my Facebook and on my Instagram page. Now for the butter. I'm using about a good 3 tablespoons of salted butter. You can use unsalted, but I thought I had some unsalted, but I did not have any. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in here. It's just going to add some extra flavor. And then you can either use your hands or a fork. I'm going to start out with the fork. And my butter is a little on the cold side. This is going to help the biscuits become nice and flaky. And I also have my oven preheated to 375 degrees. So I'm just going to use my fork and try to break this butter up into some little pieces to be incorporated all through the flour, as if you was making pie crust. Now that I've used my fork and pretty much sifted through and mushed it up inside my flour, now with some clean hands, I'm going to go ahead and just start breaking it with my fingers throughout the flour. until it becomes almost mealy. And I'm just going to massage that through real quick. And making sure I get every piece broke up as small as possible. And you can add as much butter as you want, but I'm using 3 tablespoons. If you want your biscuits, you know, as flaky as possible, if you add a little bit more butter. But you want your butter to be on a little bit on the cold side. It don't have to be freezing cold, like you got it out the freezer, but cold enough like when you got it out your refrigerator. Okay, after I have already massaged and pretty much broke up the butter as much as possible, now it's to add the milk. I have about a little bit under 2 cups of milk right here. But this is where some people start to have problems when it comes to their biscuits. You don't want to play with your dough too much. They will get tough. And you want to make sure you add the right amount of liquid to your flour, because it can cause it to be too dry, your biscuits, if you don't add enough liquid. Or you can have too much liquid and they'll go flat like cookies and they won't rise the way you want. So you really have to try to eyeball it and make sure that you add the right amount. So I'm going to go ahead, and I usually start a little bit at a time when it comes to adding my liquids to my flour. And I'm going to go ahead and use my fork here and slowly stir it. I'm going to start with this small portion. Let's put this to the side. And I'm mixing. And see, as you can see, it's not quite enough, but you can see it start to clump up. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more of my milk. Like I said, you want to add it into portions. And it's starting to become sticky. See? Starting to clump up right there. Now, this is where your hands have to get a little dirty, because you have to be able to feel it and make sure it's the right consistency. And it's a little bit there. Actually, it's starting to stick to my hands as I massage it. So I'm just going to add a teeny bit more milk. Not much. And that should be enough. Don't worry, I have a soapy water bowl on the side, so I can't clean off my hands. And see? Got a nice clumpy, doughy type consistency here. Now, this is the part where you want to add a little bit more flour to your dough, because like I said, you don't want it to be too wet. But this is also where most people usually like to roll it out into a nice flat surface and cut out their biscuits. For time purposes, I'm going to go ahead and just do mine like drop biscuits using a spoon. And that is how my grandmother would do it at times. And then sometimes some people will mold it in their hands. And I'm going to show you both methods. How it can be molded in your hand, and I'm going to show you how to do it with a spoon. After I clean my hands off a little bit. It becomes really, really sticky. Okay, now that I have one hand that's clean, I went ahead and added about an extra half a cup of flour, because this portion of the flour is what I'm going to use to help mold the biscuits to the size that I want, and I'm going to use my hands to do that. So I usually take out about a good, probably about golf ball size, a little bit bigger than a golf ball. About a golf ball and a half. And then I take a little bit of my flour, sprinkle on it. Like I said, it's going to be a little bit sticky. But then I'll go ahead and I can mold it. Now you can make your biscuits how big you want, but this is one of my biscuits. See? And you can do all of them this way, and I'm placing them in a greased pan, and I put parchment paper in my pan, as you can see right here, and I put a little butter on that parchment pan because I want my biscuits to have butter flavor at the bottom as well. So if you don't want, you don't have to do that step if you're using parchment paper in your pan, but that's just something that I chose to do. So I'm going to go ahead and make another one. I grabbed another little form and I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of flour on top. My lighting here is playing little games with me. Now go ahead and I'll mold it in my hand. And you can also drop it, but at least it fell in a bowl. And there, I have my other little perfectly formed biscuit. Now, to show you how I do it with a spoon. Gotta clean off my hands. That's why I keep a nice little soapy water bottle somewhere. I mean, not bottle, a soapy dish, a soapy bowl. Okay, now I've cleaned my hands off some. I'm going to go ahead and use my spoon. And in my bowl, as you can see, it's still thick. It's just a sprinkle, a little bit of flour on top. And that's where I'm going to go. Spoon off a portion of it. And I just drop it right inside of my baking dish. I'm going to grab one more and then I'm going to show you how it looks. There. Now you can see the formed ones with my hand and then the dropped ones. So I'm going to go ahead and finish filling up this pan, and then we're going to place this in the oven for 375 until golden brown, about a good 15-20 minutes. And I like mine golden on the top to give it that little bit of a crunch, but then they'll still be nice and light and fluffy on the inside. And while they're in the oven, I'm going to show you how I make my homemade strawberry raspberry jelly. So stay tuned and I'll be right back. Now that we have the biscuits all in the oven, it's time to prepare our homemade jelly. And I'm going to show you how we do it and what I'm using also. Okay, right here I have my strawberries and my raspberries. Now you don't have to use strawberries and raspberries for your jelly, but that's what I chose for today because they were on sale at my local grocery market. And I have about 1 cup of sugar, and I have a fresh squeezed lemon, a fresh lemon that we're going to squeeze and use some of the juice when I make the jelly. And then I'm also going to add a little bit of the zest. This is optional if you want to add the zest or not, but I'm going to add like a couple, probably about 1/4 teaspoon of lemon zest to give the berries a nice fresh flavor. This is my jar, and I'm also going to use some Jell-O. And I will mention that Sure Gel is usually what is used when people are canning and making homemade jellies at home. Well, Sure Gel can be pretty pricey, so I found out about 5 or 6 years ago, Jell-O has the same effect as Sure Gel, and you're going to still get your nice gel consistency. Now, when it comes to my berries, I have my strainer here in a bowl because some people don't like all the seeds that comes with the strawberries and the raspberries. Well, I'm going to strain out part of the jelly and use it for just the flavor and let the seeds get caught in the top of the net part of the sieve here. And I'm going to make it more like a clear type jelly that most people usually like to get when they go to the grocery store. But I also like to have a little texture with my jelly to make it like a preserve or a jam. So I will leave some of my jars with the pulp of the fruit. And I'm also going to show you, this is my pot that I have some water going, and as you can see, I have some jars in there because these jars will be put away. Now, of course, most of us probably have grandmas or parents who had big old giant pots. When they were going to do some canning, they had a big old giant pot full of water and probably had a whole bunch of jars in it. Well, because I'm not going to do such a large portion, this pot will not be used at this time. I'm only going to do about 3 jars of jelly today. So I have my regular that will be sifted out without the pulp of the berries, and then in here I'm going to have my regular chunky preserved part of the jellies that I like with a little extra flavor. And this is the pot that I'm going to use to start cooking my jelly. So let us get started. So first, over medium heat, I'm going to take my berries and I'm going to pour it into my pot here. And I'm not going to add any water because berries have a nice tendency and they're full of liquid already. I'm going to let them build up its own juice, and then I'm going to determine whether or not I need to add water to that. And so I'm going to let this berries cook down, and then I'm going to add about a good half of my lemon and my lemon zest. So we're going to let these cook for about a good 10 minutes. After about a good 10 minutes, you see the strawberries, how thick they are, and the raspberries, they're bubbling up really nicely here. Now this is where I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add my lemon and my lemon juice and my lemon zest from my half a lemon. And this is the lemon juice, and this looked to be about a good tablespoon and a half, and then I have the lemon zest that's also in there. Then I'm going to also turn down my temperature from medium to medium low or low so that this can finish cooking with the lemon juice in it. And I want to get this as nice and thick as possible with its natural pectin. So I'm going to give this another 2 minutes. So the biscuits are out of the oven, and this is one of the best parts that I like, and it is putting butter on them while they are nice and hot, letting the butter melt. And I usually just take a half and just let it go all over it. And as you can see, some of my biscuits got a little extra scorched, but that is quite all right. It's melting. It's melting. It's melting. Oh, yes. Those extra crusty ones will be mine. La, la, la. Oh, yeah, I forgot. I gotta share with my son. He likes those extra crusty ones. Now, these are the drop ones. Woo. And these are the ones that I molded out with my hand. And like I said, you can choose which method is easy for you. But I like the drop and I like molding with my hand. You can roll them out if you like, but that's all up to you. Okay, so this is what is left of the strawberries and the raspberries. And you have to really watch them because while I was taking my biscuits out, I had a little run over, so I had to end up turning the burner off. They did not stick, but see, the natural pectin has caused it to make almost its natural sauce, the sugars from the strawberry. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add my 1 cup of sugar that I have here. And it might seem like a lot, but it really isn't, because this is going to help it hold its thickness and preserve it. And then I'm also going to use my Jello, which is going to act as my sure gel to help it hold. And I'm just going to stir this all together. And I'm going to let that sit. Now normally, if it hadn't melted down and all of my berries hadn't dissolved just about, I would have it cooked through for about another 2 or 3 minutes. But since most of the berries have cooked down, I'm just going to go ahead and let the heat from the stove finish cooking it. before I go ahead and strain it for my jelly. So I'm going to let this sit. And I use strawberry jelly, and you can also use raspberry jelly if that's your choice, but I went ahead and used the strawberry. But don't it look delicious so far? Okay, let us wait for another 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, right here I am adding my jelly jar into my pot of hot water. This hot water is going to help the jars to be able to seal shut when I get ready to put my jellies in them, and it's also helps sterilizing them. So I will let these simmer and bubble until for about a good 2 or 3 minutes, and after about 2 or 3 minutes we'll go ahead and add our jelly to it, and I'll show you how we do that. Okay, it has been about a good 2 to 3 minutes, and so now I'm about to ladle in some of my jelly. I'm going to bring this bowl a little bit closer, and this is going to be one of the straining process for those of you who do not like seeds inside your jelly or in your syrups. You can also use this as a syrup recipe when you just half the amount, I would say, of the gelatin. Instead of using a whole box, you can go ahead and just use a half a box or 1/4. But I'm going to go ahead and just ladle in this, and it's going to separate the seeds and some of the pulp from the berries, and we're going to let that just go and drip all the way through. And if you want, you can also help it by forcing it and using your ladle and mashing it, so that way more of the juice. This method does take some time, so that's another reason why I usually don't separate my juice from the pulp of the berries. But like I said, if you don't want that pulp, then this is what you'll do. And then we'll see what our finished product will look like just before we add it into our jar. So this is the final outcome. This is the juice part of the jelly, and this is the pulp, which the pulp will still be used. I can use that for making some muffins or bread. It is going to give it some really good flavor, or if I wanted to add it in my waffle mix. But this is just the pulp part and some of the seeds of the strawberry and the raspberries, and this will be ladled into my jar. So right now I'm using some tongs, and I'm taking one of the jars out along with the lid. And you definitely want to use some good tongs. I'm going to get one lid and slide that over there. I'm going to cover the rest of those up. And now to go ahead and pour the jelly into the jar. A little bit of seeds went in, but not much. And then I'll go ahead and cover it up. And that is the first step to doing your jelly. As you can see, don't that jello looks, not jello, the jelly, don't it look nice? We're going to let that sit there, and as time goes on, the little pop at the top will get sunk in, and then that lets you know that it is sealed, and you will be able to store this and keep it for 6 months if you have it in a cool, dry place. This will last you about a good 6 months to a year if you do not have it in a hot, humid area. if you keep this in a cool, dry area, like your basement, if you don't have a nasty Michigan basement like some people may have, but if you have a nice basement or a nice cupboard where it's not near a lot of heat, this jelly can last you about a good year untouched. But if you just want to, you can let it rest overnight and it'll be nice and thick enough for you to spread on your toast or your biscuits, and you can stick it in the fridge and use it until it's all done. But I'm going to go ahead and finish up and make the rest of my preserve with the rest of my strawberries and raspberries and fill up the other 2 jars, and I'll show you that finished product in about another few minutes. Now these are the finished jellies. As you can see, the 2 that are together are the ones that have the pulp and the seeds, more like a preserve of strawberries and raspberries. And then the one that's by itself that is not completely full is your jelly that does not have any seeds. Very small portion of seeds, but that was the one that was strained, and that one will be the one that I figured my little one and my daughter would love. But these are nice homemade jellies that'll be perfect to go with those homemade biscuits. And as you can see, my first jelly has already popped its lid. Now disregard this label. These are not brand new jars. These are old jars that I had, but they work the same way. And I found out from my aunt that you don't have to buy jars every year. You can use your same jars over and over, as long as they are clean and you use the same boiling process or technique that I showed in the video. So with this, it's already sealed, my jar. And so these will be doing the same thing. And I sealed them up as tight as possible, and they will make their little pucker and sink in. You can see the difference. These 2 having a little bubble at the top. Sorry about that, but you can see that this one has been sunk in. It's already sealed. And these 2 still have a little pucker. So as they start to cool, they will seal on their own, and once you're ready to use them, you will hear that vacuum seal pop, just like you do when you get your jellies out the store. So I hope this video was very helpful for you, as well as my biscuits that I showed you earlier in the video. There will be a recipe posted on my Instagram page, as well as on my Facebook page, Dishinwitmeheatherd. And I hope you all have a great day. Please click like, subscribe, and share this video with everyone. For those of you who are interested in learning how to make some good homemade biscuits and homemade jelly, because as it gets closer to fall, those are perfect breakfast dishes to have. All right, have a great day and God bless.